With legendary hits like Hello and All Night Long, Lionel Richie rose to become a global music icon, capturing the hearts of millions around the world. His dazzling career stands as a testament to true star power. But behind those timeless songs lies a life marked by struggle, a journey that began with hardship and a constant fight for recognition. From glittering stages to his luxurious estates, Lionel Richie built a world of success and elegance that few could ever imagine. Yet, not everything was picture perfect. In the mid-1980s, a scandal involving a female fan sparked intense public backlash. Still, his reputation remained intact, if anything. It made him even more captivating in the public eye. What gave Lionel Richie the strength to rise above it all and stand tall at the top? This is the emotional, unexpected journey of a man who became more than a singer. He became a legend. If you enjoy stories like this, please remember to hit the like button. It truly helps us out, and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. In a dusty alleyway of Tuskegee in the 1950s, a young boy sat alone on a worn-down front step, clutching a rusty saxophone. Each note he played felt like a quiet whisper to destiny, a destiny waiting to pull him from a forgotten corner of Alabama to the brightest stages in the world. Lionel Brockman Richie Jr. was born on June 20th, 1949, in Tuskegee, Alabama. His family lived modestly on the grounds of the Tuskegee Institute, where his father worked in the military and his mother taught school. Though both parents worked hard, money was always tight. In the deeply segregated South, Lionel grew up with nights lit by candles, meals stretched thin, and afternoons spent collecting empty bottles to trade for a few pennies. While other kids played football in the yard, Lionel would sit by the window, tinkering with the old saxophone his grandmother had left behind. It was broken keys missing, mouthpiece rusted, but its sound still breathed with life. Day after day, he taught himself to replay melodies he'd overheard on the radio. His grandmother, a classically trained pianist who once played recital halls in her youth, was the first to plant a seed of hope in him. Music, she told him, is the door that will lead you out of the dark. One day, Lionel took that saxophone to school and tried to play a short jazz solo in the courtyard. But instead of applause, he was met with cruel laughter. "Give it up, Tuskegee boy," someone scoffed. He ran home, flung the sax into a corner, and cried until his body gave out. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Outside, the wind rustled through the old oak trees. Inside, the radio played softly, the warm, velvet voice of Nat King Cole singing Nature Boy. Lionel sat up. That melody, it had power. In that cramped little room, he walked quietly to the corner and picked up his battered horn. His heart stirred not just for the music, but because he suddenly knew, deep down, that he was meant to tell his story through sound. That night, he made himself a promise. One day, they will listen, not just because I play music, but because I believed in it when no one else did. And so, from that small bedroom, began a long, uphill journey, where Lionel's dream first collided with reality in a little-known band called the Commodores. Lionel once believed that signing with Motown would mean his dream had finally come true. But no one told him that dreams could also begin with hunger pains, nights sleeping in the backseat of a car, and a deep homesickness that crept in on unfamiliar roads. In 1968, Lionel was still an economics student at Tuskegee, though his heart belonged entirely to music. He joined the Commodores, a small college band, taking on triple-duty writing songs, playing saxophone, and singing. They had talent, passion, and belief. But the outside world wasn't ready to listen. When they landed a deal with Motown, they hoped to be treated like rising stars. The reality was far different. The group was sent on the road, performing as an afterthought behind bigger acts. They played small auditoriums, sometimes even fairground shows where nobody cared who was on stage. Lionel remembers nights when the band sat by the roadside, splitting a couple of sandwiches grabbed from a gas station. While the others drifted off from exhaustion, he'd quietly pull out his notebook and scribble new melodies under the streetlight. At one audition for a producer, the group played their hearts out, only to receive a quick shake of the head and a blunt dismissal. Nothing special. While other acts had full support, the Commodores carried their own instruments and hunted for cheap motels. Through it all, Lionel held on to one thing: memories of his grandmother at the piano and his mother's gentle voice reminding him, never let music leave your heart. And slowly, the effort began to pay off. Easy was born simple, smooth, and deeply honest. It struck a chord. People began to remember the name the Commodores. Then came Still and Sail, on each song another step out of the shadows. The turning point came in 1978 when Lionel wrote 3 Times a Lady as a tribute to his mother. The song wasn't flashy. It was humble, just a son's words from the heart. When he sang it at Madison Square Garden, the crowd fell silent. Lionel stood under the spotlight, but in his mind, there was only one face, his mother's. The woman who taught him that music could heal even the deepest wounds. When the applause roared through the arena, Lionel bowed his head, not out of pride, but out of gratitude. He had learned something powerful. What touches people most isn't how far your voice can reach, but how deeply it can feel. And yet, deep inside, another question began to rise. If his music could soar this high, could he one day find his own voice on a path he built alone? Some dreams shine so brightly, we're afraid to touch them, fearing they're not meant for us. For Lionel, fame didn't come with roaring applause. It came in a quiet moment, sitting alone in a grand room, whispering to himself, "Is this really happening?" The 1980s weren't just the golden age of pop music, they marked the era Lionel Richie emerged as an icon. After parting ways with the Commodores, he didn't slow down. His self-titled solo debut in 1982 went quadruple platinum. But that was only the beginning. Just a year later, Can't Slow Down, featuring timeless hits like All Night Long and Hello, became a global phenomenon, selling over 20 million copies and earning the Grammy for Album of the Year. One success followed another, and Lionel became known as the man who could turn every ballad into a classic. His defining moment came in 1985 when he co-wrote We Are the World with Michael Jackson, a groundbreaking anthem featuring 45 of the world's biggest stars, raising tens of millions for famine relief in Africa. But to Lionel, it wasn't just a song. It was a statement that music can heal, unite, and save lives. Over the next 4 decades, he sold more than 100 million records, performed on thousands of stages, and topped charts across the globe. As a longtime judge on American Idol, he became a familiar face to generations of viewers. Behind the spotlight stood a net worth of approximately $200 million earned through music, royalties, personal investments, and television deals. But what set Lionel apart wasn't the number. It was how he turned it into a life that reflected his soul. If music was where Lionel planted his success, his real estate was where it quietly bloomed, proud, elegant, and unmistakably his. If there's one home that captures the essence of Hollywood grandeur, it's Lionel Richie's 17,000 square foot mansion in Beverly Hills. Worth an estimated $26 million, this estate is more than real estate. It's a work of art, blending heritage, sophistication, and refined living. Purchased in 1999 for $6 million, the home became his sanctuary in the heart of glitzy Los Angeles. Every corner of the mansion exudes old-world Italian charm. Lionel worked with renowned architects to restore the estate, preserving its classical beauty while updating it with modern comfort. Outside, a sprawling garden with winding stone paths offers him morning walks and fresh Beverly Hills air. In the quiet of the afternoon, he retreats to the backyard where sunsets spill across a luxury pool framed by lush trees. It's here he unwinds after long tours or demanding studio days. This home isn't just a luxurious retreat. It's a testament to a lifestyle grounded in peace, family, and creativity where memories are made and melodies are born. But for Lionel Richie, luxury isn't just found in million-dollar estates or manicured gardens. Sometimes it hums beneath the hood of a car, a soft engine rumble under the California sun, where every vehicle is a symbol, and every turn of the key says something about freedom, taste, and triumph. From the early days of his solo career, Lionel saw cars not merely as transportation, but as chapters of his journey, statements of refined taste and quiet defiance against the odds. Shortly after becoming a global star in the early 80s, he walked into a Mercedes-Benz showroom in Alabama and bought 7 cars on the spot. The total value, over $250. $100, an extraordinary sum at the time, especially in a southern state still struggling with racial inequality. But for Lionel, it wasn't about showing off. It was a bold, silent declaration: I've come this far, and now I choose how I live. By the 2000s, now a living legend, he selected a Ferrari 612 Scaglietti, a luxury 4-seater coupe with a V12 engine, starting at $320,000. This wasn't a Ferrari for flaunting. It was one for those who truly appreciated craftsmanship. With its elegant curves, hand-stitched leather interior, and a 0-60 moment time of just over 4 seconds, the car was a blend of Italian artistry and American spirit, just like Lionel himself, stylish, seasoned, and still burning with passion. Later in life, Lionel shifted gears. No longer drawn to roaring engines, he chose a Tesla Model S, a sleek, electric sedan priced around $110,000. A quiet choice, but deeply meaningful, reflecting his embrace of innovation, care for the environment, and connection to a new era. The Tesla doesn't scream for attention. It glides forward in silence, just like Lionel, calm and certain, never needing noise to prove his worth. To Lionel Richie, each car is not just a symbol of class, it's a milestone, a marker on the road from dream to destiny. Amid his discreetly luxurious life, Lionel has nurtured passions that reflect who he truly is, habits that speak less to wealth and more to how he savors life with grace and depth. A devoted art collector, he has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars acquiring works by Ernie Barnes, a painter whose legacy is tightly woven into African American culture. In his mansion, Lionel has a room dedicated solely to art, where he often stands in quiet reflection before each painting, as if speaking to the history of the community he came from. Now 75, with the spotlight slowly dimming behind him, Lionel lives in a world of his own, making a life without hectic schedules, sold-out arenas, or constant media glare. What remains are the values that make life truly rich. He wakes early, often making his own coffee in a sun-drenched kitchen in Beverly Hills. Some mornings, he strolls the garden with Lisa Parigi, his companion of over a decade. Though never formally married, Lisa, 40 years his junior, has brought him a peace he hadn't found in past marriages. Today, Lionel shares a close bond with his children, especially Nicole Richie. Once known for her wild younger years, Nicole is now a successful mother and entrepreneur. Lionel often speaks of her with quiet pride and still calls her every evening when they're apart. When he's not touring or on television, Lionel writes music not for release, but to keep his spirit alive. Some days, he simply sits at his old piano in the living room, tapping out notes like entries in a musical journal. Famous, wealthy, and weathered, by both heights and heartache. Lionel Richie is no longer just a performer. He's a man who has learned to live slowly, to hold on to what matters most: love, family, and the peace it's taken a lifetime to find. At the height of his fame, Lionel Richie was the golden voice of a generation. His love songs echoed through stadiums and radio waves, from the Americas to Asia. But when the spotlight began to fade, he was forced to face storms no one could have seen coming. In 1988, as his first marriage was unraveling, Lionel began a relationship with Diane Alexander. The situation became public when Brenda Harvey, his then wife, unexpectedly showed up at the apartment where Lionel and Diane were staying. A confrontation followed, and soon, headlines spread. Brenda was arrested for disturbing the peace, and for the first time, Lionel Richie's name appeared in the news, not for his music, but for his private life. The world was stunned. The artist, known for his polished, gentlemanly image, was now at the center of a public scandal. Although all three later chose silence to protect their dignity and family, the damage had been done. By 1993, Lionel and Brenda finalized their divorce. At the same time, Lionel suffered another deep loss: the passing of his father, Lionel Brockman Richie Sr. In 1990, at the age of 75, his father had been a constant source of support from the earliest days. That loss shook Lionel deeply. He withdrew from the stage, stepped away from the cameras, and quietly disappeared from the music scene for nearly a decade. It wasn't a dark period, just a necessary pause, a time to heal, to live a normal life, to be a father, a husband, and a son still learning how to live with grief. But for a true artist, music is never far away. One night in early 2006, inside a Los Angeles studio, Lionel returned quietly, but with purpose. He partnered with younger producers like Jermaine Dupri and Stargate to create Coming Home, an album that marked a powerful comeback after years of silence. Tracks like I Call It Love weren't sung from the heart of a young romantic anymore. They came from a man who had lived through heartbreak, endured loss, and found his way back. Coming Home soared to number 6 on the Billboard 200, his highest charting album since the 80s. But the real success wasn't on the charts. It was in the moment Lionel Richie looked in the mirror and reminded himself, "I'm still here." And so is the music. We all stumble. We all have days when we lose sight of who we are. But as Lionel Richie showed the world sometimes, all it takes is one night, one song, or one person to help us remember every dream. If it's true enough, will always find its way home. The man who once struggled to hold on to his voice through divorce and depression is now the one helping young people in need find a voice of their own. There's something longtime music lovers often say when they talk about Lionel Richie. He didn't just leave behind beautiful songs. He left behind open doors for others to walk through. For years, Richie has remained closely tied to Tuskegee University, the place where his journey in music began. There, he's more than a famous alumnus. He's a quiet mentor who returns to give back. Once, standing before a packed auditorium of graduating seniors, he spoke in that familiar, steady voice. "I used to sit right where you are. The only difference is, I didn't give up." During a special scholarship ceremony, he called the name of a young woman whose parents were manual laborers, a student who nearly dropped out because she couldn't afford tuition. As her name rang out, she broke into tears. Lionel said nothing more than what mattered most. He gently embraced her. The man who once sang Easy Like Sunday Morning had moved an entire room to silence and tears. His impact doesn't stop at home. Richie has worked with UNICEF for years, quietly supporting humanitarian campaigns across Africa, from education to basic health care in underserved regions like Kenya, Ghana, and Nigeria. No speeches, no spotlights, just sunlight, clean water, and school books reaching places that once had nothing. He never called himself a social activist, but his actions speak louder than any title. He doesn't want to be remembered as someone who changed the world. He just wants to help someone stand tall, even if just once. In an interview, when asked about the achievement he's most proud of, he simply smiled and said, "Seeing someone succeed and knowing I helped, even a little, that's enough." Lionel Richie's journey has never been perfect. There were missteps, long silences, and moments of doubt. But his patience, his kindness, those are what turned him into a role model, not for his fame, but for the way he chose to live once the lights went out. You don't have to be a star to make a difference. You just have to share what good you have. That's the legacy that truly lasts, the kind that outlives even the greatest recordings. So tell your story, because you never know who needs to hear it today.